Hey, John here. In today's video, we're going to talk about a very important subject. And this was actually a request from several of you, and that's muting. So I'm going to demonstrate the muting techniques with this A major shape, starting on the 5th fret. Just 3 notes per string. And also I would like to say and give credit to Frank Gambale. I think his video was probably the first one that I saw that talked about this in detail, and that's his first speed picking video from mid-80s. And it was really good to see. Even though I did a lot of these intuitively, it was great to get a very specific tool set that I could apply, and I'm going to show you exactly how you can apply it as well. So basically you will be able to identify what's going wrong, and then you will have 3 different tools to fix whatever is going wrong. So the tricky thing about electric guitar with distortion is that even if you're not hitting a string, if it's not muted properly, it might start ringing eventually, especially the higher volume you use. So, and that's because of resonance. So certain open strings here are going to react to certain other frequencies, and then they're going to start sympathetically ringing with that pitch. So that's why, even though you might not be hitting something, and that might, really annoy you because like, I'm not even hitting that string, why is it so noisy? But that's the reason why. Like I said, this is mostly for us electric guitar players, because when you play classical guitar, you generally want as much resonance as possible. But like I said, for distorted playing, if you want to play that cleanly, you need to make sure that you mute all the strings that you're not actually playing. So we're going to have 3 points of muting here. It's going to be the side of the index finger, and that's basically going to be for muting strings that are higher in pitch than the one you're playing. So a thinner string. So if I'm playing the low E string here, I don't need to mute with anything else except for the side of the index finger. And it's kind of like a bad bar chord. So you don't want to push too hard, you just want to slightly touch the string here. And if you follow this channel at all, you know that I prefer to make sure that my index finger is actually moving like I'm playing piano, meaning that I get an attack in the left hand. And the reason for that is so I can relax more, it's easier to change positions, you get better synchronization because you actually line up the attacks in the left hand as you would do with the right hand. So there's a whole host of great things when you do that, but that doesn't mean that this kind of muting isn't effective. Because what I said about resonance, that also takes a little while. You don't have to sit there and mute everything all the time, because it will take, depending on the volume, of course, but it can take a few seconds even before it starts to build up enough for it to be noticeable. So just by, even if I'm doing this, my finger coming back here is good enough for it not to start ringing in that sympathetic way. So if you're wondering about me lifting the finger and how it still works, that's why. And once we've done the low E string here, so like I said, I don't need to do anything else with my right hand. I can just mute with the index finger here. The second way of muting is the right hand, and that comes into play when we come to the next string. But there's also another thing that comes into play on the next string, and I'm going to show you that in a second. But for the right hand, it's basically just the palm of your hand, just like how you mute a power chord, for example, or regular muted notes. It's just that you're muting the string that you're not playing. And that's where this third option comes in, because sometimes when you're playing something and it's it's the very next string, it can be easy to accidentally mute the actual string you're playing. So if I want to play this, and I come up here, and I want to mute the low E string, but I sort of over mute, so I spill over to the A string, so I get an unwanted muted note. And the way around that is to use the tip of your index finger, so like this. So as you can see, I'm actually just barely touching the low E string here with the tip of my index finger. So it's quite far from the classical guitar technique where you want to be very, disciplined in getting everything on the fingertips, but it's a different instrument when you have distortion. So that's why we need to do this. And this thing in particular is something that I picked up from Frank Gambale. And if you watch him play, you can actually see that he does this a lot. Most of the time I use it with only the index finger, but sometimes it's gonna be the other fingers as well. But you'll notice that when that's needed. So far we have the low E string, only muting with my left hand index finger on the side here. And then when I get up to the A string, I can either mute with my right hand if I'm really careful, or I can make sure to mute the low E string with the tip of my index finger. And then when I get to the D string, now I'm gonna definitely use my right hand and mute the low E string at least. And then again, use the tip of the index finger to mute the very next string. So the string below in pitch from the one that I'm at. So if I'm on the D string, I make sure that the A string is muted by slightly touching it. So again, don't overdo it, just slightly touch it. Everything's easier to see from the side here. And if you get that right, everything should sound clear and nothing should be ringing that you don't want to be ringing. As you can see now, when we get up here, you're kind of building a tunnel. So let's say that this is the string you're playing, and this is the lower pitch strings, and this is the higher pitch strings. So here's my right hand muting, and here's the string that I want to be ringing. And then I have my index finger here. And again, you can see the lower pitch strings and the very closest string, the index finger that we talked about. So we have these three tools, and then we basically keep them going like this. So when you go up and down the different strings, you want to make sure that you keep this tunnel open. So if you can do that, you'll be in very good shape when it comes to getting everything to sound the way that you want. So like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, this topic was a request. So if you have any ideas for a video, just post them below and I'll look into them. I can't promise I will make every video suggestion that you make, especially if they're shit, but if there's a good topic that I think fits my style of teaching, I will definitely look into that. Now, it's all well and good to know what to do, but you also want to be able to find and identify the problems you have. And I think this is where it's really good to make everything that you're practicing into smaller sections that you can repeat, because then you can really hone in on the problem areas. And then when you find out like, oh, okay, so I'm playing this thing and this string is ringing, then you know that, oh, I should use, whatever tool, whether it's the index finger, if it's a higher pitched string, or if the tip of the index finger, if it's the very next string from where you're playing, or if it's the right hand, if it's a lower pitch string from where you're playing. Because then you basically have a solution to any kind of muting problem that comes up. So my suggestion is take something that you're currently learning, take a small part of it and keep repeating that so you can find the problem area. And when it comes to what type of tone to use when you practice this, I really believe in using the distortion that you like playing with, but remove all the external effects like delay or reverb or anything like that. So you basically just have your pure distortion. I'm playing here, I have a bit of reverb and delay, but for us practicing, it's good to use quite a dry sound, but still with the distortion, because then it's much easier for you to really detect what's going on in your playing. But again, it's all about finding the problem areas and then fixing it with one of these three tools we've talked about. And if it's not obvious, this works you know, whether you play legato, hybrid picking, sweep picking, anything, it's going to be the same type of muting technique. And even tapping is going to be the same thing. So it's just going to be the higher pitch, going to be the index finger, side of the index finger, and then the lower pitch, the right hand, and then the very next string will be usually the tip of the index finger. So if I play something like this, so a major 7 arpeggio, string skipped. When I do this, I make sure that my index finger is touching the E string, so that's not gonna start ringing. And then from here, I move up, same thing, and make sure that the D string is covered as well. And obviously then my right hand is covering the lower strings. And if you do that, you'll find that you won't need any type of string dampener or anything like that. So it's all about being conscious of what you're doing when you're practicing, and then you will find that it just becomes a habit. It will feel strange not to do it this way once you got into it. So it's all about finding the correct ways of playing something and making sure that you do enough repetitions for it to become second nature. And when it comes to using any type of external device to mute the strings, that's up to you, but it's really not needed to play the instrument. And I think the biggest example of that is one of my teachers when I went to GIT in Hollywood back in 95, 96. And it's this guy, TJ Helmerich, who plays 8-finger tapping, totally amazing player. You can check out a clip here. As you can see, he doesn't use any kind of string dampening here, and I think he's one of the best examples, because if anyone had an excuse for using any kind of contraption here, would be him with the style that he has. If you want to improve your left hand even more, you can check this video out.